When I look at the art that encourages me right now, I think right now, hope, radical hope, is very punk rock, is where I find the most encouragement, is in celebrations and explorations of joy and of real solidarity, looking at systems instead of at individuals, looking at the big forces that shape us maybe through individual lenses, but not so much like, you know, that sort of 19th century or mid-20th century, you know, massive focus on the individual and their like individual spirit rising up and like taking power, but instead looking at how like power flows among us. Like that's the stuff that gets me so excited right now, like Kaveh Akbar's poetry. A few big societal things are troubling to me. One is a lack of faith in expertise, a dubiousness about the idea of expertise in general, that we can, you know, do our own research, you know, and like I'm somebody who cares a lot about science, but knows just enough to know that I cannot do my own research. And I think that the humanities have a role to play in bridging that gap, that the human endeavor itself is valuable enough that we shouldn't, you know, count our rosebuds while we may, and instead should really try to invest in a long-term future for our species. The love that I poured into them will go on through them. But I do think that it's important to, you know, have your work grounded in love. Paul Farmer, who was a professor here and a hero of mine, a co-founder of Partners in Health, often talked about doing work grounded in love. And I think in exploring those emotional responses that we have to art, we can start to understand something about ourselves more deeply. We are going to survive this. There is going to be another side of this. And I really believe that we can, through collective action, make a world that is habitable for humans and for other animals for millions of years to come. I think hope is the correct response to consciousness. And so that's what I would say, is look to the places where we have made progress, look to the activists who've worked together in deep solidarity with one another to make that progress, and find the hope there. I mean, language is weird, right? Because it's one of the only tools we have, but it's wholly insufficient. You don't know if a hot dog is a sandwich, because there is not a one-to-one relationship between reality and language. There's not a one-to-one relationship between experience and language, and especially when it comes to the way down, forget about hot dogs, which are hard enough to describe. Forget about trying to say the sentence, I believe in anything. It gets really hard when we start to talk about the way down experiences, the deeply internal experiences, the profoundly abstract experiences. Like my favorite painter, Agnes Martin, she used to say that she liked to paint with her back to the world, and she liked to paint the feeling when you wake up in the morning and you are happy for no reason. And how do you paint that? How do you paint innocence? How do you paint fear? Well, it's actually these are very deep, interesting questions, and the same questions apply to language, I think. I try to remember that there is no one-to-one relationship. The experience that I have inside of my mind is never quite the experience that will exist inside of the reader's mind, but what I might be able to do through writing is create enough space for the reader so that they can commingle their experiences with the text. And I think we spend a lot of time in writing talking about story construction and character development, but there's this other part of writing that I find really fascinating, which is space creation, making a place for the reader. Kurt Vonnegut used to talk about that the most important word in any of his novels was the white space. And I think that's true. I think the empty space is often where the magic happens, because that's where the reader is. I guess I want them, and I want you to believe that we're worth it, and to believe that the love, and I think the human capacity for love is astonishing. I think if you zoomed out to 15,000 feet and you looked at humans, you would be like, oh my God, they can be cruel to each other. oh God, look at there's that old Roman line that man is a wolf to man. And I think that they would look down at us and say, oh God, these monsters. But they would also be like, good God, the way they love each other. The generosity they can show each other, the kindness they can show each other, the ways they can open up their hurt and their hurt places and their hopeless places to each other. And I really do find hope there.